Hello, everyone. Sustainability, what a big word. I was a journalist for a number of years, and that was a word sometimes it's difficult to deal with because now it's a branding word, for the climate change word, it's a big word. In a sense, and we have here experts on doing alcohol beverages and making them, so that's an old practice. In a sense, how can we separate a bit the positive impact of being sustainable with having a profit in such old method of doing alcohol beverages? And let's start with you, Ezgi. Your company really has these two companies have a global perspective in terms of what they do. How do you go about that?
Yeah.
The profit and the sustainability part of the thing, the business.
So thank you for having me. So AB InBev is the world's leading brewer. So we've got about 500 brands in our portfolio. Some of the ones you may know are Budweiser, Stella Artois, Corona. And the way we think about sustainability is first and foremost about supply security. So for us, this is about the topics that are material to our business, how we think about water, how we think about agriculture and raw materials, barley, specifically hops, how we think of our packaging solutions and the energy that we need to brew, package, cool, transport our products. So ESG, or sustainability broadly, becomes an enabler of our commercial vision, and that's how we've organized it. And that's how you can also create a meaningful impact around the world, because as you're looking into our footprint, with operations across nearly 50 countries around the world, we do see the far-reaching implications of climate change in our sourcing regions, in our communities. We see the importance of inclusive growth. So for us, this becomes about shared prosperity and creating a future with more cheers.
Over the years, recently, things have changed, even in terms of methods. Sustainability got a better branding perspective for the audience. How did you deal with it in terms of, did you make big changes? What were the major changes you did? Because you're the chief of sustainability, so you got a real sense of what you did in factories and things like that.
Traditionally what companies go through is they focus on their four walls first and foremost, and then they look outside into their value chain. So for us, it was a similar journey. We've always focused on efficiency and resource management inside our four walls, but increasingly the more we understood the world and our value chain challenges and opportunities, we started investing in those as well. So in how we think about growing water stress around the world, or how we think about the widening yield gaps at the farm level, how we can tackle the farmer problems, or we work with 5.5 million small mom and pop shops around the world. They're our customers, the retailers that sell our products. How we think about closing the digital inclusion gaps or financial inclusion gaps for those retailers, small businesses as well, is how we've really evolved over time. And I think, for us, what really made a difference is integrating it into the business and saying, okay, there is a core group of specialists that are the sustainability team, but this becomes everyone's everyday job. So down to a brewer manager, an energy and fluids director, an agronomist, a packaging innovation specialist, a marketing manager, they will carry targets linked to their bonus tied to sustainability. So it becomes truly integrated within the business and how we think about our operating model and value chain.
Sure, Jessica, in terms of Bean Suntory, there's also this, a lot of brands type of situation and manufacturing those brands. How do you see the profit versus sustainability part of those brands?
I mean, we have a big range of mainly whiskey brands. So we're one of the world's leading whiskey companies, brands like Jim Beam, Maker's Mark, Yamazaki, Lafroig. And when you look at those, for us, there's never been a dichotomy between profit and the kind of what's the right thing to do in a sense, because we're even more perhaps than you, a fundamentally agricultural business based in a set of very small communities. If something happens, so there is continued drought across parts of Europe, for instance, we physically can't make cognac. There is no other place we can do it. There is no other place to go. If we have issues with peat in Scotland, which is the key element that gives Scottish whiskey its incredible smokiness, if something happens to the peat stocks, which have been massively depleted, we can no longer function. So for us, that thing of saying, oh, well, it's either profit or sustainability, when you look over the long term, and we're a very long-term business. Most of my products take about 12 years to launch. You cannot make that trade-off. You have to be looking at both. For us, it's not a question of a trade-off, it's a question of survival. We have to be at the heart of communities, and I think Ezgi's actually right. You always start close to home and then expand out, but making sure that every single location we produce in, which is a unique provenance, a unique community, and a unique environment, is restored, and that we're giving back to that and managing that in as a sustainable way as possible, is absolutely core to our continued business.
Sure. There's a major preoccupation now in terms of climate change, but as I said in the beginning, sustainability is a big word.
Yeah.
How do you deconstruct, and in the branding strategy type of thing, how do you deconstruct that word into being authentic, but showing you're authentic, not just being?
Yeah, so our sustainability strategy, and I think this is happening a lot, is people are realizing, as you say, it goes beyond climate. It really is the sustainability of humanity. And I think people often talk about like climate crisis, or the planet crisis. The planet's going to be fine, yeah? It's us.
Yeah.
We're the problem, it's a humanity crisis. And so when we thought about sustainability, we've really built 3 different pillars to it, one of which is around environment, and it's around ensuring that we're not just having no negative, but we're actually starting to be climate positive. The second one is around consumers, and saying how, particularly in our category, do we think about the right way for people to responsibly consume and enjoy our products. That's consumer positive. And then we have community. How do we make sure that we're giving back to the communities that we operate in, that we serve, and also that we're reflecting them? We're ensuring that people within those communities have the means to progress, to make the kind of lives and careers and futures that they want. So for us, our overarching strategy is all about those 3 pillars, and all of those are baked in, I think, like Ezgi was saying at ABI, very much into our metrics, our KPIs for everything that we're doing, whether that's innovation or investment, and also into our goals for our people. So everyone across the company has a goal on an annual basis which reflects those ambitions.
So you can track that, those ambitions that way. Ezgi, in terms of ABI, in terms of authenticity, how can you show that you are doing the right thing, you're doing progress, you're making it better in terms of sustainability?
Yeah, for us to be able to do that, we lean into the beer category. Beer is inherently inclusive, natural, and local. And inclusive because, as I mentioned, our local value chain, from the tens of thousands of smallholder farmers that we work with at the field, side by side as trusted partners, to the millions of customers, small businesses that sell our product, we're inclusive business. That inclusivity extends into our product portfolio in how we think about our innovation and choices and affordability that we offer to the consumers, the occasions development and how we invite them into the category. Natural, we're a company based in nature. Beer story starts at the field with barley. We protect and regenerate those natural resources. And local, over 90% of our products are sourced, brewed, and enjoyed locally. So once you start thinking through those distinguishing themes of beer being inclusive, natural, and local, then you can also have your brands to pick and choose where they can live and where their brand purpose is to meet the fast evolving needs of consumers as well in a changing world.
Makes sense. And there's a lot of storytelling because there's a lot of stories to tell, right? Agriculture,
Yes.
people that are doing the stuff in a different way with different methods. You can also use their stories and share it just to show that these are authentic people that are doing a real thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say it goes beyond storytelling to problem solving. I think what we're seeing right now is a next generation of brand builders that are really coming in and going deep and becoming more nuanced on these topics that they're trying to tackle. They're no longer just relying on the sustainability teams.
New technology.
Yeah, exactly. They are learning it themselves as well.
In terms of Beam Suntory, technology is important in terms of where to go next, in terms of new methods you're using.
It is. I mean, I think for us, the whiskey industry is very, very human, and it will always stay human. So we use technology where it can help us, but one of our biggest focuses is making sure that we keep that element of humanity in the industry. And I think when you look at how sustainability needs to evolve, it needs to leverage both. So for instance, on a brand like Maker's Mark, which is, we're very proud, became one of the first distilleries to achieve B Corp status in this last year. One of the things we look at there is really hyper-local sourcing. All of our wheat on that brand is grown within 5 miles of our distillery. And that has a huge impact on obviously things like carbon emissions and transport, but also on the wealth and of the community where we are. So there are places where we use technology. If we're doing big expansions and we're looking at how to minimize carbon emissions or something, technology will play a big role. But there's also that real understanding that keeping things local and understanding how we can work, sometimes in more traditional ways, actually, that give us greater sustainability in our business. Those two need to partner and really be hand in hand.
That's really interesting because you have technology, but you don't need to use it every time for all purposes. You can be traditional and have a small layer of technology, and that will make a difference, right? So that's really interesting. There's also a big thing in terms of packaging, and you said in terms of distribution, but packaging for ABI, for example, packaging is a big thing in terms of using that to have a less problematic carbon footprint. We all heard about Apple and changing their little boxes, and that was like the news. But how do you see packaging?
Mm-hmm. If you look at beer's packaging, the glass bottles, the cans, they're recyclable, right? So it's one thing to keep in mind. The challenge there is, recycling rates are low and driven by policy and consumer behavior around the world. So we try and influence those. So that's one aspect of it. The other big piece is we're a big champion of circular economy with the two-way bottles, the returnable bottles that we use, and the kegs that we sell our products through. So how do we continue to protect and promote that circularity, and that circular model is something that is top of mind for us, while we continue to innovate, lightweight the packaging, or introduce more recycled content into that glass or that can, the one-way solutions. But beyond that, we started thinking through packaging as also a mechanic to deliver sustainability messages and to really empower consumers with information and transparency. A few years ago, when we took on 100% renewable electricity commitment, our Budweiser brand made a commitment to put a brewed with 100% renewable electricity symbol on their bottles around the world, and we sell tens of millions of bottles every day of Budweiser. And now, as we go renewables in each country, locally, we're actually putting that symbol on there. That gives a consumer a mechanic, an everyday choice that they can make towards greener products. It also can be a conversation starter tens of millions times a day. So as we think about packaging, we really think of it as an enabler, as storyteller as well, to empower the consumer of where that product comes from.
In terms of packaging, do you have a strategy? Whiskeys are a different package for sure than beers and all that, but there's a strategy there?
There are. Our packaging plays quite a different role. We're predominantly, obviously, as you can imagine, in glass bottles. I think the things that we're looking at is firstly, obviously, the recyclability piece, both the inclusion of greater recycled content in our glass, lightweighting, managing for those elements. But I think one of the fascinating parts that we're beginning to explore is what is the future of luxury packaging and sustainability? Because a lot of the cues of what people think of as a luxury bottle, the glass is heavier, it's crystal, it's beautifully finished, but it's actually not very sustainable. And so one of the things that I think is happening across particularly the luxury end of the industry is a rethinking of what does the future of luxury mean, and what does luxury mean to a Generation Z or a younger millennial consumer coming into that world when they do have those concerns, and that's much more top of mind. So I think what we're expecting to see over the coming years is a real shift in the way that luxury brands show up, and that'll include our portfolio, away from some of the traditional cues, which unfortunately do work against sometimes the sustainability agenda, and I think that's going to be fascinating to watch.
You already went to a question I have in terms of the future, but I add another layer. We don't have a lot of time. There's an anti-ESG sentiment now, not big, but there is. And where do you see first the future of this area going, but also with this sentiment that had pop up?
I think there is a small pocket of anti-ESG sentiment, but I do think it sometimes gets more airtime than it deserves. I think a lot of what we're seeing right now is more concern around how you're going to track this. I think particularly for companies, it's a hard area. You know, we're used to making financial disclosures. That's pretty straightforward. This is a whole area where we're now being asked potentially to share out information that we don't even know how to capture and track. So I think some of the nervousness around ESG is actually coming from within companies as they start to grapple with that, and you're seeing that with how the SEC are tackling it. So I think that will continue to be challenging, but from a company's perspective, you know, yes, there are some people who are anti. More than 60% of consumers now say, I expect companies to serve me up options that allow me to live sustainably. Yep, consumers are willing to do a bit, but the onus is on us. They're expecting that from us. So I think it's going to be an imperative for every company. It's going to become almost a hygiene factor because the consumers are going to push for that and are not going to accept compromises.
And in terms of future and all this anti-ESG sentiment, especially the future and how to track metrics, really.
Yeah. I would say, as a sustainability professional, I actually find it quite encouraging that the conversation is becoming more mainstream, right? So the more something becomes understood, it goes through stages of misunderstanding as well. You know, it becomes misunderstood as well in the process. But I think this is why materiality really matters, right? What are the topics that are material to your business, and how are you really building authentic programs and impact around that? And once you start communicating against it, and yes, tracking can be difficult, and yes, science and accounting is still evolving in some areas, but there is still a lot of science and evidence-based technology methodologies out there that allow us to really track that measurable impact that we're creating around the world. So, you know, I'm encouraged by what we're seeing around the world, because I think this is now becoming a conversation topic for the masses, and I invite that conversation. I think it is exciting to see that, because it actually makes us more robust in how we think about it, more disciplined, more structured as well at the same time. So yes, definitely, you know, I think coming out of the pandemic, what we're seeing is that consumers are becoming more environmentally conscious, more socially aware. It is becoming more of a hygiene factor, I totally agree. And you know, it's time for the brands to also stand up for the values of the consumers. And consumers not only care about those brands, but the companies that back them up as well. So I think increasingly what we're going to see is the consumer brands and corporate brands also linking closer together. Yeah.
And consumers will probably also see if a brand is authentic. They will be more judgmental in terms of that. The metrics will be more judged also. So that will also be important, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And this is about having that multi-year vision and approach as well, and looking really deep into your brand purpose and the core of your product, where it comes from, what it stands for, how it connects with its origins.
So it makes perfect sense. Our time is up. Thank you so much, and let's try to be sustainable. Thank you.